made up for. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Craig. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all well. Thanks for joining me on this Friday afternoon. Craig's a little bit more of an expert than me at this. I've seen him almost every other day on a webinar. This is my first solo ride, so bear with me. I say it's Friday, whether I know what day it is actually. I think tomorrow's Saturday and then Sunday because I've got no appointments in my diary. So that's probably going to be my wife giving me a to-do list and a paintbrush. And so I know it's not a working day. Again, thanks for coming along. What we're going to get through today is, I'm probably going to do it back to front from what Craig actually suggested. We're going to talk about comeback campaigns. And I'm going to present at the end of the session a campaign that we've put together that we're going to roll out nationally. And I'm going to set the scene to begin with for the first half an hour or so and give you some tips. It's useful there to see that most people are only 25% of the way through their planning of their marketing campaigns. A few, 6% are well on the way. But we're finding, as that poll showed, most people have not got a plan in place. And to be honest, I'm not surprised because it's tough going to try and put a plan in place at the moment. These are the 4 steps that we're going to run through today. I'm going to break it down to the 4 A's that I've talked about previously, if anyone's heard me speak. We're going to look at aims and objectives, just where to start before we start actually getting into the nitty-gritty of doing some activity. Why are we doing it? You know, who are we talking to? The audience is just around your target groups and doing a bit of planning on speaking to the right audience. Then we'll talk about action. I'll talk about comms plans, social media, and then we'll finish with a quick review of how to assess what's working and what's not. As Craig said, questions and answers are welcome throughout. We'll do a Q&A at the end, but Craig's going to jump in and help me out if anybody's got a question or Craig wants to chip in. Those that know him well will know that it doesn't need an invitation to chip into a conversation. So Craig, please feel free to join in when you need to.
No problem. I'm already chomping, John. I'm already chomping, but I'm going to do my best to be quiet for you, mate.
So the comeback campaign we've planned, very briefly, it's a national campaign. We're looking to roll it out in partnership with SimSpa from this afternoon onwards. I'll run through it at the end. There'll be a pack of free assets that we're providing to the industry, so you can say buy into the campaign, you can join the campaign for free, and then there'll be different packages that you can opt into. So I'll talk about that and use some examples as we go through the session. Very briefly on myself, as Craig says, you can see on the stream, my name's John. I'm the head of marketing at TA6. TA6 is powered by Alliance Leisure. Alliance develop leisure facilities across the country and support operators to grow and develop sustainable leisure operations. Today is more about this T-2 plan. So we came up with T-2 about a week into lockdown. We already, well, at that time, we didn't know how long it was going to last. So we put T-2 together to discuss at what point are the government going to give us notification to reopen facilities. And we talked around 2 weeks, but that could be 2 days, 2 hours, who knows at the moment. Those who run golf and tennis and outdoor facilities in different parts of the country will have had 3 days notice, was it last week or the week before? So we're not sure what the plan is, and that uncertainty is creating a lot of unease in the industry and a lot of questions are being asked. But we're going to keep coming back to this plan of, and it's not just around a membership campaign. This isn't just about fitness. This is about theatres, outdoor courts, anything that you've got to offer within your leisure portfolio. Hopefully what we talk around today will fit within that. The challenge is that it is a changed environment, whether that's government guidance, UK Active are trying to put out information for us to keep up to date. The media are changing all the time in terms of whether they're in attack mode or reporting on different things. And also our customers, the sentiment of the nation keeps changing almost daily as we build to a new update and then we go again. So keeping up to date with that is tricky, a little bit like the stairs at Hogwarts. We're probably getting more questions than answers at the moment. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, I probably will have a number of more questions for you rather than answers, but as a team, you need to be getting together to decide on them answers for yourselves. So I'll just touch on your customers and maybe what's the mood of the nation at the moment. There's lots of surveys being done. We did our National Fitness Survey earlier in the month, we got a great response, but a couple of interesting stats on the screen around 87% of people, well, the opposite, 12 to 13% said they'd only work out at home post-lockdown. The majority said they're looking forward to getting back into physical leisure centres and facilities and clubs. Of that 87%, 54% said they'd also look to work out online as well, which is an opportunity for operators to not just think about customers returning to their facilities, but how can they be a provider at home as well. Bottom left stat there about people considering to buy a membership, 35% of non-members in the survey said that they'd look to buy a membership as well. So again, confidence for the industry that there's a desire and willingness to get back in, but as we're going to chat through, there's also a hesitation that we've got to be reassuring customers that we're safe and ready to open. And that leads into this notion that there's a bit of a dichotomy at the moment of the situation. There's a real split of views where there's a lot of negativity and fear and caution and uncertainty around what's happening. And at the same time, we see these sort of messages popping up around as well. You know, we're supposedly distanced from each other with social distancing, but a lot of people are talking about being more connected than ever before with our friends and family. I probably speak to my parents and my sister and relatives more often than I did when we could go out and meet people, which has given people the chance to reflect. A lot of people talk about reflecting and setting new goals. We appreciate what we've got. And then a lot of people are looking forward to taking action. You can just see with the golf courses that have opened up and how busy the bookings are for golf. There is a desire to get back into facilities, but we've got to show people that we're safe to do so. So how are you feeling as a business? I'd say that there's a lot of fear and uncertainty at the moment, and that's replicated in our communities. And when we look at aims and objectives of our campaigns, the first thing we normally do is how many sales do we need? How many people do we need through the door? What's our KPI that we're going to measure this campaign against? And actually, when you look at the message that we should be putting out, our key message is to reassure people to begin with. That fear and uncertainty is going to drive our first campaigns. And we don't just want to focus on sales. This isn't a big pre-sale opportunity, not in the early days, weeks, even months. It's about giving confidence to your existing customers to get them back in. But you will have two types of customers. You'll have your exercise nutters that we all know and love, and they keep the buildings going, but they'll be there tomorrow if you opened up now with nothing in place. And then you've got those who are at risk, who need the reassurance. And we need to have our campaigns and messages aligned to talk to both of those groups of people. But it's definitely a reassuring, safety is our priority type of message that we wanted to put out there. So the key is to be positive but not ignorant. Those of you might remember the Nationwide Building Society did a campaign a good few years ago about brand new customers only, skitting different industries that all they focus on is brand new customers. And ironically, for the next few weeks and months, our mantra might actually be existing customers only. And at what point, as we talk through this phasing strategy, do we unlock the door to new customers coming in? And how do we balance that with capacity over existing customers? So the question to yourselves to begin with, just stop and take a second, is how are you feeling right now about your phasing strategy? Based on that first poll that Craig did about marketing, the two probably go hand in hand, and you probably feel a little bit like this little guy. But I'm not surprised, because we've tried mapping out what it might look like, and this is sort of head-blown territory. Where do we go from here? If you map out what opening might look like in terms of the different phases and scenarios and questions to ask, then this is where you get to. I'll break it down in a second, and I'll share a lot of these slides afterwards. So those that are probably screen grabbing now or taking pictures on your phones, I'll share certain slides afterwards. So please feel free to relax for a second. But just running through this, the impacts of closure, this is where we're at right now. Reviewing government guidance, looking at our databases, how we're reviewing where the business is at now, waiting for government to tell us we can go and open, and then we have to take into a number of things into account in terms of what facilities and products are we launching, how does that affect capacity, what training do we need to do with our staff, all these questions on the right-hand side that pop up. As I said, I don't have the answers, but I certainly have the questions to make you think as a team, what do we need to put in place? And then the big unfreeze happens. We need to decide as a business, how do you unfreeze your memberships? And all this links into your campaign because it links to the messages that you're putting out and the timing of your campaign as well. So unfreezing members, are you reducing your membership fees? Are you increasing membership fees? Are you allowing all customers to unfreeze? Lots of questions. We then keep reviewing the process to follow government guidelines, open a little bit more, another unfreeze, and eventually we get to unlocking new customers. So where do you go to help? First thing I'd say is you get together as a team and discuss all those questions. You have to discuss them as a team, involve your marketing teams because they're the ones who are going to be putting out the comms and messages. Where else do you go for help? Simple, ask Craig, font of all knowledge. He's doing some great work chatting to hundreds of operators. Previous webinars, if you haven't been on them, check them out. There's recordings there. But there's lots of resources. Chat to other operators. There's LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups set up, UCAX, SimSpar putting out guidance. But there's lots of information to come up with what you are going to do as a business to phase reopening of your facilities. So still linking with aims, your objectives, and this is just 4 objectives I'm suggesting, but you have to come up with your own. But the first one is to reopen safely and return income to previous levels. That's a core message throughout your campaign. You want to be seen as a destination of health and wellbeing for your local community, for your previous customers, new customers, existing. This resonates with me, to provide a welcome change from home workouts. I don't know about you, but I'm fed up of Joe Wicks now. I think I'm on day 58 or something sad like that. So I'm looking forward to doing something different, and hopefully the leisure centres will be able to provide that. And then ensure that your staff feel comfortable working in a new normal, that phrase that's going around at the moment. What will normal look like when we come out of this? But you've got to define your own objectives and talk to your marketing teams to make sure that they're aligned with that and that they can put that messaging into your campaigns. So moving on with T-2, we know what our aims and objectives are. The next thing is to look at our audience. And I picked this slide deliberately, this background, because I'm noticing that a lot of operators are talking to their customers, but what they're actually talking to is these 3 ladies. They're talking to regular previous exercisers, a lot of the time through Facebook. So that's probably 60–70% female, and most of it is online workouts, which again appeals to a small market. So how are you communicating to all your customers, not just fitness members and not just people interested in home workouts and group fitness? I'll go into a couple of tips on that in the action stage. How do you talk to your customers and who do you talk to? Traditionally, we look at different activities, maybe by demographics. But the one that's really come into play with marketing at the moment is by people's motivation. Where is the mood of your customers? Whether it's an urgency to get back in, a desperation to do something different, wanting freedom, or that nervousness around wanting reassurance before coming in. So you take customers like Mavis on the screen. So over 60s have been the hardest hit by this pandemic, but they're eager to improve their health to stop it happening again and put themselves less at risk. But they're also more nervous than others because they want to minimize their exposure. So how do you, again, align your messages that you're talking to both groups of customers within that single demographic? And then families as well, looking for something different to do, get out of the house, been locked down for so long, but they still want to be reassured it's safe. They still want to put their family's health and safety as a priority. And just linking into the comeback campaign, which again I said I'll come to at the end, but this maps out a number of the concerns that different user groups have and how you have to fit your core messaging to align with those groups. And this is just a snapshot from a much bigger spreadsheet that then maps out the key channels that these people are likely to engage with. What are their fears and concerns? What are the barriers to stopping them coming in? And that all links into your marketing campaign. So once you've got your aims and objectives and your audience, then we can look at this next stage of actually doing some activity. And a lot of people have jumped to this stage already without really having a plan, which is fine, but actually just taking a minute to consolidate what you're doing. And I've put up a couple of examples from our clients who aren't waiting till they open to start their campaigns, but they're running campaigns right now. If you're doing any activity online through social, your websites, why not put a campaign message around it to link all the messages together? Warwick Sport were doing some advertising, promoting the fact that they were doing free workouts for their community and for their members. Other operators have promoted the fact that they are doing family workouts or activities to do with the kids. To actually promote that, if you're lucky enough to still have a marketing budget that's active, then put some advertising behind it, promote it, position yourselves in the community that you're there doing this activity, especially if your competitors aren't, or if your competitors are charging for it and you want to be shown to be offering a free service. So just a good example that you could run now, I'll just bring up a web link. Again, we'll provide this at the end of the webinar, but we've provided a load of free resources from TA6 for operators to use completely free. So the We Are Here campaign, it's downloadable, you can use it right now. If you speak to us, we can bespoke it and link it into some of your messaging. But there's two ways of using We Are Here. You can run it now and then end the campaign ready for opening and launch something new. Or you could run it as it's shown on the screen on that second graphic, we are here, we are ready, and then rolling it into we are back, we are open, we are here. So different ways of running a campaign, either a campaign now for this phase and then starting afresh, or a campaign that links all the phases together. And another example from some of our clients that are looking at already what that phasing looks like. So we don't know what the date is, but we know there's going to be a countdown. So getting the assets ready, and the images on screen are just flat JPEGs. I can't stress this enough, and I will again in the presentation, but video tells 1,000 words. Try and use video as much as you can. Use your staff, use your management, use your customers to talk to customers about getting back and getting active. Briefly, a couple of tips on social media, things you can do right now, is just don't become part of the noise. It's got easier, I think. In the early days of lockdown, there was a huge rush to do online workouts. It was just thousands and thousands of online workouts, and it just became too noisy. So I think trying to create a bit more interaction with your customers, trying some quizzes, some polls, asking them what they're doing, use user-generated content rather than your own. Ask them for their workout of the week. What are they doing in terms of their nutrition and eating healthy? But share information that's useful and actually relevant to the situation. My biggest takeaway on social media is always this, is the power of the question mark. It's meant to be social, it's meant to be engaging, it's meant to be a conversation. You need to ask more questions than just shout at your customers. So go back to your social channels next time you get a chance, review your timeline and just see how many questions have you actually asked. I will counter that with, it is difficult. If you've furloughed your staff and you've got minimal resources to manage your social channels, you might not want them to be poking people with questions because there's no one there to respond, and that's understandable. But if you have got a team of people who can respond, make sure you engage with the customers and get involved with social media as it's meant to be. So how do you communicate with your customers and when? So this is a simplified version of that complicated map I showed before, but constantly reviewing capacity once we're open. And then you communicate to your customers, and we'll stress this a few times, but your existing customers are the priority. As soon as you can open the doors, there aren't many operators that are probably going to sell to new customers. It will be difficult because you'll have to make decisions on how you don't sell to new customers, but your priority will be managing capacity to get your existing customers back. So your comms plan has to take into account a few things. Firstly, all your customers, your partners, your staff, counsellors, board members, depending on the organisation, but talking to all the people involved in your business. Then looking at the key milestones of when things are happening. So linked to reopening, frequently asked questions as they get updated. Then utilising all your channels. Again, another thing we're observing from looking at different operators is that there's an over-reliance on social media and particularly Facebook, but utilising your website better, utilising newsletters, email, text messages even to your customers. And again, not just your membership group, but as many customers as you've got on your databases. And then have a plan B. If there's a second spike, if there's an infection in your facilities, something will inevitably go wrong at some point. You need to be planning for that now. So chat through with your teams what could go wrong and have a plan for it. So once you've spoke to existing customers, you'll keep reviewing capacity. Then you'll switch on an acquisition program, which will probably get ex-customers back in first. And then you'll look to engage with new customers. Which sets links into what's it going to actually look at like post-lockdown. So if you're following the media around the world and different examples, these are some of the scenarios that we're facing. So Hong Kong are ahead of everyone, and this has just been in the media recently, so I've put a couple of pictures. But if your users have to come in and face staff behind barriers, work out in individual booths, chat to staff that have got masks and almost hazmat suits on doing cleaning, they've had their temperature taken, and every 5 seconds they're stood over a floor sticker or a sign saying, "Clean me, stay 2 meters apart." There's going to be a lot of negativity there. So we want to still create that positive message in the centres. How many people are actually going to stick with workouts if that's the experience they're getting? So you need to think about trying to return to normal, but within the new normal parameters that we'll be working in, and looking at new customers, existing customers, and then bringing new customers back. How can you create a normal environment? So fitness challenges, make sure you've got a fitness challenge lined up, ready to go, that's not about fittest, fastest, strongest, but a gym challenge that really, I say gym challenge, fitness challenge that gets all your users together. It creates a community, a common goal, rather than competing against each other. Trying to put some of them normals back into the facilities so that it does soften the experience when customers come through your buildings. Otherwise, it could become a bit stark and a bit too health and safety. Well, that's still important. Key thing to get fired up early in your campaigns is testimonials, using existing customers who've made that return to share their experiences with new customers and inspire them to come back. Utilising staff and management teams to actually go on camera and talk to customers about others' experience. It's a bit of a shame. There was a big rise in this type of marketing just before lockdown. I noticed a lot more operators using testimonials, and it being really a priority to get back to that. So booking in some photo shoots, videography shoots, making sure you've got that opportunity to get these testimonials from your customers. I mentioned video before, but you have to use more video. Just creating assets that are just templates and JPEGs and PDFs won't cut it. Actually talking to your customers face-to-face in the centres, but then videoing some of that. So staff training videos, how do you contact staff when they're on furlough and not potentially allowed into facilities? How do you reassure customers from a distance that you're safe? You get management on camera talking about the facilities. There's lots of good examples. I see it a lot more in the private sector at the moment, but business owners doing walkthroughs, taking their cameras through the facilities, showing members and customers little changes that are starting to happen in the clubs. Virtual tours, try and reassure, again, people from a distance that it's safe to come around and have a look. Gym inductions might look very different in the future. So how can you now be planning to capture videos of all the different pieces of kit and welcome people to your club? And the obvious one is virtual classes that a lot of people are looking into and have already. Lastly, on the action phase, I just talk, I've mentioned this previously in talks, but the industry for a long time has done too much selling. And I think what we need to get back to is, especially at this time, is driving value in the business and doing that through content. So we're not going to launch campaigns that are gym swim classes, £35, join now. People won't join based just on price. If price alone actually comes into it, they'll be joining on what value you can provide. How are you different from other operators in your area? How can you create that content through blogs and articles? Go back to video again, actually videoing some of the articles that you want to put out there, but why are you safe? Why are you the experts? Why are you the destination of choice for customers to pick you over someone else, or to not pick anything and just sit at home? So, quick checklist, we've done our aims, we know our audience, we've started taking some action. And there's just two things to finish on this. The first one is around staff training. It's not something I'm going to go into today, but it's key that your staff are on board with the marketing messages that you're putting out there. It's not just a marketing message, it's a comms message. It's a consistent message about reassuring customers, training staff to deal with scenarios that they might not have faced before. Staff will have never had to stop someone and say, can you stay 2 meters apart from that other person? how do they go about dealing with that potential conflict? And the second one, linked into the 4A's, is just the last stage, which is to assess and put in place some review mechanisms of what's taking place. And this is where we often get into this hamster wheel approach, especially in marketing, where we move on to the next campaign before we've had time to properly review what's taking place. But these phases that we're in, we'll be reviewing activity constantly. So we'll be looking at KPI monitoring, not just around sales and inquiries and traditionally things that you might have looked at, but occupancy. How many members are we recovering? What is that break-even point to potentially even open the business, which inevitably leads into your income targets? We're constantly looking to adapt to the latest guidance and review capacity to know when the next phase might kick in. Utilising feedback and surveys. I mentioned at the beginning that there's a lot of surveys being done right now. There's a big one from LeisureNet and 4Global that's due to be released shortly that's more than 60,000 respondents. It's huge. That will be really great feedback. But what you want to know as an operator is how are your customers feeling, specifically in your area, your community. So setting up some small surveys, asking those customers, are you likely to return? If we did X, are you likely to return? If we did X, Y, and Z, are you likely to return? Finding out what their fears are, what they've missed, and using that to tweak and change the program that you're going to roll out when you open. And then lastly, both online and offline processes. How can you monitor activity? Whether it's advertising, inquiries, website hits, or offline processes, how are you dealing with people with walk-ins and inquiries in that way? And again, not just fitness, but you'll still get people potentially inquiring about birthday parties, potentially in the future. Swimming lessons, you'll get people rolling back in once they get activated. So it's not just about your fitness and your gym memberships, but your whole entire customer base. So a quick recap just before I go into the comeback campaign specifically. You have to start with your aims and objectives. So those that said at the beginning they're 25% there to their marketing plans, I'd like to think that that first 25% is sitting down, identifying the products and activities that you're likely to roll out first, and the phasing approach that comes with that, linked to the messaging that you're going to put alongside each of those activities. That will then help define which audiences you're going to target. As I've stressed, it's existing customers first before you go for new. And then you can define your target groups around different demographics, different activities, and people's motivations to return to exercise. Then you can take some action. You can fire up your comms plan. You can fire up your social media content, gather testimonials, use video as much as possible. And potentially at that stage, you start your advertising in terms of pay-per-click if you were at a stage to acquire new customers. And lastly, you make the time to assess. Don't let it slide by. Monitor the feedback. You're going to be monitoring capacity. You should be monitoring all aspects of your business. So define those dashboards in the first aim section, and then you can have the tools in place to assess when it comes to it. So if we put all that together, and I just run through the Make the Comeback campaign. So this is a national campaign aimed for any provider, any leisure operator to use, from independent personal trainers right through to multi-chain operators. And it's got a local agenda of getting your communities restarted and firing up your business again. There's lots of big campaigns out there that I love as a marketeer and I think are great. So This Girl Can, other campaigns. But what this campaign does, it has a destination in mind. It has a destination to drive customers actually into your facilities. For the objectives that we looked at, as I've said already, one is to energize the public back into your local facilities. The second one is to help you as operators bounce back in the most effective way. That's not necessarily the quickest way, but because it's got to be the safest way, but we want to get businesses back up to where they were before lockdown, and then you can get these new acquisition programs in place. We want it to be flexible. I'm avoiding using the word agile because Craig will kick me, but the word agile is thrown around a lot at the moment. So I've gone with it's flexible enough to be used across multiple activities, multiple messages for all types of providers. And we want it to drive participation and action. We want people to see the campaign and take action, which links into some of the word choice that we've gone with for the campaign. Actually using comeback as a phrase is quite a positive intent statement. It makes people want to make a comeback, and it's a verb. It tells people what to do to make the comeback themselves. So making a comeback today, come back in stronger. And then it can be linked into come back for your health, come back to your favorite instructor, come back to swimming, come back to the theatre, come back with energy, come back with motivation. Lots of variations and freedom for marketeers to use it across multiple activities. Ultimately, with 3 key initial groups in mind: your existing customers, as I've said, making the comeback, come back to us, getting people restarted. Then looking at your ex-customers, the quicker wins, the ones who've previously been members or customers, and you can get them back, so you've got them on your database. And then you can fire up for your new customers. How do you get them back? Come back for your health, come back with your family, getting people restarted again. The flexibility to be used for different call to actions, not necessarily the bottom 3 that are on there in terms of trials, open weekends and discounts. That will come down the line. It's not about new customers only. This is about more existing customers only at the beginning. So welcoming messages, the benefits to membership or to that activity, and putting programs in place that align with your campaign. We do want to acknowledge and tie in with national campaigns as well. We don't want it to be this or that. We want to use both. So when National Fitness Day or Great British Week of Sport gets rolled out, we want the comeback to fit with those, to actually drive participation and at the same time reassure customers that you are the safe facilities to return to. Which handily links into the next slide, which is just around make sure your messaging ties to where people are feeling. The campaign message isn't just about getting new customers started, it's about a brand message that goes through the business. So literature on site can reflect that. So stay safe and come back. COVID safe, make the comeback. It all links together. I used this slide a few minutes ago, but just stressing testimonials in the campaign messages. Incentivizing people to give their testimonials, and that's key. We might go away from this and say we need ask your fitness team to get testimonials, but it's hard work sometimes. So motivating and incentivizing your customers with a prize draw, knowing that they can help other customers come back and inspire others is good enough for some people, but some people do like to win an iPad or the chance to win a membership. So make sure you're putting the incentives in place to use that. And where possible, again, video the testimonials. If people aren't prepared to go on video, take a picture, get them to write it down, but get as many testimonials as you can. The campaign's designed, it's template driven, so the first set of templates that are freely available, they can be branded by operators with their in-house marketing teams or other agencies to drop logos and key messages into them. We want to provide as much in the campaign guide as possible, so social media support in terms of memes and ideas of how to make it work across different social channels, making sure it links to local media opportunities. Press release templates will be in the campaign guide. And then we'll also be putting some examples of how to create content. As I mentioned before, it's not about a sales message specifically, but it's about reassuring people and delivering value in your business. And to deliver value, you've got to have some content. And that might be a blog, it might be a video, it might be customers just being chatted to on site. So we'll put some content ideas in the pack. And what it looks like in terms of for yourselves as operators, there's a free pack that you can buy into. We've teamed up with SimSpa to roll this out from this afternoon. You don't have to be a SimSpa member to buy into it, so we are making it freely available. And we're looking at rolling that out 8th of June in terms of templates being available, but we can do lots of planning before then with teams to get it in a good place, which is really the second option, which is about giving you the, depends on your resource that you've got available. Some will take, if I jump back, some will take this pack and their in-house teams will make it a success. You've got the templates to adapt it for your own teams. But where you don't have the resource or skill set to adapt it, we can step in and be that partner. So we'll provide an account manager that will lead you through the process of setting up the campaign, looking at your target groups and your objectives, and then creating the assets and looking at video down the line as well. this wasn't intended to be a sales pitch. So I'm going to skip this very briefly, but that is all the list of options that we can provide for your campaign. So it's not just about creating a pretty logo and some JPEG designs that can be used on social media. It's about running it throughout your whole business, from health and safety awareness signs through to video testimonials, professional photography, and linking into customer surveys and online advertising when that kicks in. So I'm almost done. My next step for yourselves, I'd encourage you to go and visit our website, because there's a lot of free resources on there. There's more information about the campaign I've just briefly talked about. We've shared our survey results. If you want to share that with your team, hopefully that's some useful, optimistic feedback. But the one thing I will push you to go to is the free resources. We're updating it weekly, and you can download social media assets, quizzes, different guides and tips and knowledge base for your customers. So please keep in touch in that way, because we'll keep regularly updating it. So thanks for your time. Hopefully that's been useful. It has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour for 40 minutes, so thanks for bearing with me. If you want to keep in touch, I'm on Instagram, YouTube, wherever you can find a social media channel, I'll probably be there. So at John Lever or at Alliance TA6. Help me impress my kids if possible. If you want to check out our TA6 YouTube channel and get my videos, getting a few more likes. I'm not quite at the 1 million mark yet, but 100 will do. So thank you for your time. Cheers, Craig.
Okay. So first and foremost, I'm just going to ask a little tiny poll, and that quick poll is this. How helpful has this been in terms of helping you build your public confidence campaign? If you can give us a little vote. This is the nerve-wracking bit, this, John.
Yeah, no pressure, thanks.
Right, come to you to do this. Okay, scores are looking really, really good again, John, so that's amazing. Out of 5 to get 4.5, mate, is absolutely spot on. Perfect, so we know we're hitting the right track, which is amazing. Now, obviously, I was here to help John do questions, but we haven't had any. John, you've explained things that well that no one needs any questions answered yet. But as I say that, a little question just pops in. So Dean Martin said, great, John, thank you very much. I've also had another one from Mark Purcell from Freedom Leisure. A big concern around revised capacities where adhere to social distancing. Conservative reduction in footfall of 50%, which makes perhaps the challenge of enticing back through the door less of an issue than possible, accommodating those who may want to come back and cannot get a slot. For me, online booking becomes key across the business, and no marketing, no rock up and pay and play initially will be crucial as we find our feet. So I think it's like what you were saying, John. There's a lot of decisions to be made first. Now, the decisions really need to be made before the marketing campaign's put into action. But at the minute, people don't seem to be making decisions and definitely don't seem to be putting plans together. Now, you hit the nail on the head with something, John, before, which was the tennis people got 3 days in order to launch the business. Now, we knew it was coming, so they didn't have 3 days, but they did if you waited for that, okay. We know that, especially in England, there's a lot of people who are extremely worried that we could be available to open on July the 4th. How ready are you? You know, it's a key question. It's a key thing that we need to look at. And as I say, hopefully we can get it pushed back further, John. But, you know, in your estimate, John, how long does it take to actually fulfill a full campaign? How much time would you like to do it?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we've been working on an 8-week approach, but we're aware that potentially we're a lot less than 8 weeks away from opening, and potentially we're a lot more, depending on where that goes. So ideally 8 weeks gives you plenty of time. We have turned around campaigns in a lot less, and I think that's the reality of where we're at, because decisions will be made, final decisions will be made much nearer the time to opening, and it's having, as I said, you know, the conversation with your teams to make sure that you do know what you're going to do when that scenario happens. But, you know, right now, about 6 weeks from, I think we're about 6 weeks from the beginning of July, we need to have a plan in place and to have all those scenarios lined up.
Okay, perfect. And as I say, I think, you know, as a supplier or someone who helps customers, there's nothing worse when they try and do it themselves, and then with 2 days to go, they go, do you know what, we're not going to do it, let's get them in. And then they expect you to get the same results you would have if you had 8 weeks. So the one thing I'm trying to say to people is, look, as soon as you decide what help you need, let the experts help you as quick as possible. Don't try and drag them in at a later date. A few more questions. Mark, sorry for getting your name wrong. I'm going to blame me dyslexia for that, so I'm all right. I've got a cover. Someone's asked, so Kareen Parnell from, I think that, if I remember rightly, that is Kareen from Mid-Devon. And she's put, John, could you possibly go back to the costs of the packages? So there was two, wasn't there? There was a free one, and there was one for 1,500 or 1,499, was it?
Yeah, so we've we've put together the free pack, which is exactly what it says, that will be made freely available. The bespoke pack is a suggested option. We are bespoke in these. We've had a couple of clients inquire already, and everyone ends up being slightly different. But this is just a benchmark of what would typically be included in terms of branding your assets, account management time to make sure it's fitting your objectives, so the support from ourselves, and there's some dedicated time to producing bespoke assets that an individual operator will need for their business.
Okay, perfect, John, thank you. We've had another question from Terry Cooper. How does the messaging content tie in with the UK Active public campaign materials?
Yeah, so as many of you probably saw, that was announced yesterday on the UK Active webinar, which was the first time we'd seen it ourselves as well. So we have been talking to UK Active for the past few weeks to make sure that campaigns do align, and that's what I'm key to do. I mentioned National Fitness Day in there as well, but the UK Active Fit Together campaign could quite easily sit alongside Make the Comeback as a joint campaign. The messaging is very much the same. The objective is the same, to get people back into local facilities and to make sure it's done safely. The UK Active will be coming from much more that point of sticking to their guidance that they've put out, and they're looking at putting a kite mark in place for people who follow that guidance. The campaigns, they can work together, I would say, quite closely.
Okay, John, perfect. Let me just come off that 1 second. We've had, how does the messenger, so again, John, I think what a key factor is with that is, yes, it only came out yesterday, so that was the first visual that people have had of it. But in terms of campaign appeal and the looks of things, is it fair to say aesthetically that this one's a bit more flexible?
I think so. I think we're a little bit ahead of UK Active. I'm Hattie on the call was talking about they have got the assets in draft form, and they apologise for not having them immediately ready, but they're going to come pretty soon. So when you look at the amount of time we've spent dedicating ourselves for the last 7-8 weeks to pulling the comeback campaign together, it's pretty, hopefully you could see for yourselves in the presentation, it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, John. So the next question is from it's from Martin Shreenan up in Falkirk. So what I've done, I've turned it into a poll just to try and find out his views on this. Okay. So the question for this being, how was that one? Sorry, I'm going to create the poll now. And the idea behind it is, so the question is when are you looking to open, or when would you like to open? So I'm going to put a column here for obviously July, which is the earliest date. We'll have one for Aug, and we'll have one in there for September. I'm going to create the poll. That should work. And now I should be able to. Here we go. So when would you like to? Now the idea behind this, we know that July the 4th is the date that we might have to open, but this is more of trying to get a feel for Martin Shreenan up in Falkirk as to when people feel they would like to open. So we can definitely see there, if I show you the results from this that are kicking in, we can definitely see there that, people are hoping that this gets pushed back a little bit. We can see we've got over 83% from August onwards. So hopefully, Martin, that gives you a little bit of an idea as to where people are looking for. Now, the unfortunate thing is that I don't think it's going to be a choice like that. And the actual question that Martin was sort of asking is, are operators possibly considering where they have multiple sites? John, would you advise them to only open certain sites first, or would you? To me personally, the answer to that question would be you're going to have teething problems in every single venue. So the sooner you can get teething problems, the better. But I understand the finances between opening something up and not opening something up. So what's your views on that, John?
Yeah, and some of it will come down to how operationally they can comply with the restrictions and guidance that's given at the time. So speak to some operators that are putting flows in around the facilities with one-way systems and ins and outs of gyms, and certain clubs will have to just shut off rooms because they can't get people in and exercise safely. So it's building by building specific. So multi-site operators inevitably, I think, will have different centres opening at different times based on size and resources at site.
Okay, excellent. There's another question here, which is, with a university facility and a predominant student base going into the summer, where would your focus lie? Now, I don't know whether you've done any work on this, John, but I was doing some stuff with a couple of universities, and my advice was sort of, let's have a look at, we know the students are not going to be there, they're going to be away, so that's fine. We've got a little bit of a safety gap till September. So this is a good time for them to get their staff and alumni in. And it's exactly like you were saying before, John. If anyone's continued to carry on paying you, they should be the first in. The people who froze, who are still alive, should be the second in. And then we have the ex-members, and then we have the new members, etc. So yeah, what's your thoughts, John? Would you for universities?
Yeah, I just say with universities, because you've typically got staff, students, and the community. September, when the students do return, and there's potentially that spike that a lot of university facilities have, it would be a difficult proposition to open under the new guidelines and have all them students in place. So they've almost got the summer, July, August, if they can, to test with a lower capacity, getting the community back in, like I said, getting the alumni back in as well.
I think, John, as well, it's about them getting it right as much as they can before the students come back. So if they've got this bedding in process where they can make some of the mistakes, like inevitably everyone will, then I think the key behind it is that you make them mistakes before the rush, just so they can try and deal with it. It's a bit like, I went to have a chat with the supermarkets. I went to have a chat with Asda and Tesco to find out what issues they had. And the three biggest things that they would change is the door that people go in wouldn't be the front door, so they can man the queues easier, and it's not as an open space. Physical barriers, they've said that in supermarkets, stickers, you need to have them, but you definitely need to have physical barriers if you want to stop people going certain ways. And the last bit was something you've already mentioned in this, and it's about the conflict, because it's definitely coming. Now, I think it's going to be worse, the conflict in gyms, due to the nature of the fact that they paid for the product, whereas in Tesco's, I haven't even got it yet. I'm just annoyed I can't get it. So, yeah, perfect. We've got a few more questions in here. So, would you advise videoing measures like fogging and other deep cleaning exercises to boost the campaign?
Yeah, it's not normally the sort of amazing content that you'd have done pre-lockdown, but I think anything to give your customers confidence. Word of caution with videoing, that there's always someone out there looking to shoot you down. So just make sure that you are doing it properly and that you're following all the guidance, because if the staff don't have the right PPE on, there'll be someone looking to pick you up on it. So if you're doing it, do it well. Check with management. Don't just send two lesser attendants off to start videoing themselves in the plant room. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. I totally agree, John. I think it's not something by guidance that has to be done, but in terms of public confidence, it's the only reason I'd be doing it. I can clean the place, well enough without it needing the fog, but if I am going to get the fog, it's only because I want my customers to know that I'm doing something about it. So if you are going to pay that price, it definitely makes sense to get it as part of this confidence campaign. So thank you very much for that one, Natalie. We've got a question from Richard Orr, who's in York University, and he's put, what levels of discount on membership should be offered, if any, for reduced provision of facilities and services? I've got an answer for this already, John, but I'll go to you first.
I'm not going to make a decision based, for operators. I'm seeing, again, it's a question for operators to decide on themselves based on their income and where they think they'll return to. There's an operator we're aware of that are already looking to reduce their memberships to 5% of the levels, and then introduce an online membership for online classes alongside that, sort of counter some of that. But what's your view, Craig? I'm interested.
Okay, so my view on this is that ethically, I think it'd be absolutely amazing if we could afford to say, right, we've got 1,000 members. When we first open, we'll charge 50%, then we'll charge 70%, then we'll charge 90%, then we'll charge 100%. And that would be lovely if you had all the money to do it. Now, knowing that there's already trusts that are handing the keys back to councils, there's already massive organisations who are closing down, the likes of Exercise for Less and a few others who are trying to sell. I don't think people have enough money to be able to be ethically correct. So my stance on this when I was presenting yesterday on the updates, etc., is I would use what I call the Sky approach. And the Sky approach is that instead of giving 1,000 members only charging them 50%, if somebody comes to complain, I have a way of dealing with that complaint. So maybe 200 people might get a different rate. Well, that's much better than me giving all 1,000 the money back or only charging them half. So, you know, it's a really big balance between the sort of ethics and the community-led stuff and the fact that I just don't think it's good for the community if you don't charge them money and your business closes. So depending on where your finances are, to me, depends on whether you can be ethical or whether you have to go with a business approach. So, yeah, that was mine, Joe. I've got one more question, and this is by Nicola Bromley. So interestingly, Cambridge and Manchester universities have said no students back until 2021. So potentially others will follow. And now I think that's very, very brave. In order to not take the natural influx that they would have every single year is a very, very brave step. And one that is quite far ahead, I feel. I don't know what you feel about that, John. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think having teenagers myself and knowing how schools are working at the moment, I think universities are way more set up for online learning. So it's an easier decision for universities to say we don't need to teach face-to-face until 2021. We can provide distance learning until then, which ultimately then if students aren't physically returning to campuses and halls, then leisure operators within those campuses will struggle because there won't be the student population to sign up again.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so there's been a slight correction in there. At Manchester, we are delivering lectures online from September, but we were very much a student back to the campus in September as well. So that it's slightly different. How do you move? So the next question is from Teddy Cooper. How do you move from a Sky discount approach back to normal? Well, you move back to normal when they stop complaining because you've opened up all your facilities. So if I've only got half my classes on, then I've got to offer some sort of compensatory deal. If I can't get into the gym because there's no booking spaces, I've got to offer some compensatory deal. So we move back to normal as and when we phase back to normal. So I would suggest that obviously through the different phases, what you offer as sort of remuneration or sort of compensation to the people that complain would be based on the phase that you were at. So obviously phase one would be where you give it the most, and as we get closer to it, it'd be less. I've got one more for you, John. This is from Sean. I think they're looking at virtual for the first term semester and then for a January intake next year. So obviously for the universities.
Yeah.
I think they're getting the message out there nice and early, probably too early for my liking, but I'm made up that certain people are willing to make decisions because I don't know about you, John. What I'm seeing a hell of a lot of at the minute is organisations that probably have 90% of the information they need to pass to either the customer or whoever it may be, but because they haven't got the final 10, they're saying nothing. And this is happening with NGBs, it's happening with governing bodies, it's happening with everyone right the way through. And I think it's really poor in terms of communication. What's your thoughts, mate?
I think there's a nervousness from operators because every day it could change, and I think they don't want to put the neck on the line by saying X if then it's going to change to Y within a couple of days. So I understand some of them concerns, but at the same time, I do think they need to be putting out more information to more of the customers to keep them informed. What they can't do is stay quiet, and then the next time customers hear from operators is when we say, now we want to switch your membership back on, start paying us.
Yeah.
There has to be something in between.
Yeah, totally and utterly. We've got another one here from Greg, which is membership pricing is too difficult. Spin it on its head and consider just pay as you go. So what they're basically saying is obviously they'd only be paying for the bits they can use. I think the loss in revenue would be so low it's untrue if they did that. But again, what's your take, John?
Yeah, it'd be a very brave decision to take that stance. I haven't discussed that with any clients as of yet. I don't think anyone's actually broached it, but I think the one that is being discussed is 12-month contracts versus going back to month or a lower tie-in because of people's fears over committing when they don't know what's going to happen in the future. Yeah. I think operators with 12-month contracts need to look at a flexible solution within the membership pricing.
Yeah, I've spoken to 2 customers about pay-as-you-go only, and my advice is please don't do it. Obviously, we're going to be going to a booking only session anyway, but the reality is if someone who comes in once or twice a week might still be willing to give you their month fee, whereas that's gone. That's totally and utterly gone. You're literally only going to get exactly what they use, and I just don't think it's a financially good decision. It's much easier to do, but in terms of finance, but again, Greg, if you can, this might be Greg from Cheltenham. Greg, if you could possibly send any information to us on the modelling that you're using for this, so we can have a look at it, and then obviously we can sort of update people on that. One more from Greg again, which is blend classes in person and virtual to manage capacity and access, which obviously is a good idea. But again, I think that would be part of your campaign, John, wouldn't it, to make sure there's some sort of blended offering?
Yeah, definitely. And again, the campaign message is led by what the operator decides to do. So I'd like to think that a lot of operators are looking to introduce an online offering to balance out and to maintain what good work they've done in this period of time. It'd be a shame just to stop it and move just to face-to-face live classes again.
Yeah. Someone else has put one in, Stephen Guthrie, I think it's from Edinburgh University, and what he's saying is pay-as-you-go might also increase social interaction with staff. So please consider that as well, because obviously you've got to stop for every transaction because you don't know what it is, whereas membership, you can just go through. So all these things have to be considered. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to obviously wrap it up. There will be a follow-up email that will come from Alliance, and it'll just be sending you the links and the various things that they've discussed and anything else you want to do. Obviously, with a score of 4.5, John's done you a great job. So if you can all give John a little clap or a pat on the back or a thumbs up or anything you like. In terms of sort of my help in trying to do this, and obviously John's, I think what we both asked for, if you want to put anything on sort of social media to let you know what you thought of the session, if you liked it, if other people would like it, we can then start pushing people towards the video because this has been recorded. But yeah, thank you very much for your time. It looks like we've kept at least 80 odd organisations entertained, John, for a good hour, mate. So thank you very much. Anything else you'd like to say before you pop off, John?
No, just appreciate everyone's time. Enjoy your weekends, if you can tell it's a weekend.
Yeah, they've all blurred in, haven't they? A Monday and a Friday seem the same, John, don't they? So, okay, thank you very much for your time, and we will hopefully speak to you soon. Bye now.